Hi, everyone. Good morning. I'm a couple minutes late today. Sorry for that. But I'm going to be talking about, obviously, NIW versus EB-1A. I'm Helen Partlow. I'm an attorney at Waypoint Immigration, and I specialize in EB-2 NIW, and I also do EB-1A, which is not something that I talk about too much on this channel, as I kind of keep it more focused on NIW related topics. Amber Davis, she talks a lot about EB-1A. She's the founder of Waypoint Immigration. Please look her up and follow her if you don't already. You probably already do, but just in case. She does talk more about EB-1A more regularly than me, but I do definitely get a lot of questions as to, is NIW better suited for me, or is an EB-1A more suited for me? So, kind of discussing today just more general things as to what the differences are, which one might, which one you may want to analyze to see which one is better for you. But today we are just talking about general things. If anyone has any sort of specific, questions related to your specific journey or profile, of course, we are happy to help. You can go to waypointimmigration.org. You can see we have a free resource on the NIW right now. We are working on a resource for EB-1A as well, but that's not ready yet. You go to the top and you can hover over resources, then click on EB-2 NIW guide. And I have a slew of different FAQs that I've thought of that help answer, a lot of questions that people tend to have for NIW. And then you can also download the guide too that has additional information. But if you want to discuss, in a call more specifically, if you would be better for EB-1A or EB-2 NIW, again, at the website, waypointimmigration.org, you click at the top appointments, and then you'll see different consultation types. If you want to just discuss EB-2 NIW, they have, that option obviously there. And then also we have an EB-1A explore/assess. And if you do that one, you can really discuss both at the same time. And then Alex or Amber would be able to help guide you as to which one would be better for you. But for today's purposes, going back to, first just seeing which one is right for you. So EB-1 is obviously first preference of the employment-based category, and this is brought upon, on your own. They're both self-petitions. You don't need employers for either one of them. You bring them on your own behalf. So EB-1 is first preference, EB-2 NIW is second preference. And that's important to note when you are looking at things like the visa bulletin, and everyone's talking about the October bulletin that just came out over the weekend. And you'll see for EB-1, if you are from a country that they call rest of world, meaning you're not part of China, India, Mexico, or Philippines, it's current. So if you do get approved for an EB-1, you can apply right away to get your green card. And those from China and India do have a backlog, but it is much more reasonable than the EB-2 backlog. So then if you look at the visa bulletin, you look at second preference, that's for the EB-2 NIW, that's where that fits in there. And you'll see everyone from anywhere on the globe has a backlog. So for those from rest of world countries, it's about 3 to 5 years. From China, India, there's definitely a longer backlog, and especially those from India, where I've heard anything from like 50 to 90 year backlog for EB-2 category. So in that instance, if you are someone that is from a backlogged country, especially from India, we get a lot of clients that start working with us to get their priority date locked in with the EB-2 NIW, and then they can use that priority date when they are eligible and apply for their EB-1A. So this also works if you have any other previously approved I-140, maybe through PERM. You can use an approved I-140 priority date and lock it in and use it toward the application that you are seeking now. So whether that be NIW or EB-1A. A lot of the time I know PERMs are failing. They are lots of layoffs and such. So people are looking for different options outside of their employment. And that's why the NIW can work for those where perm fails, but maybe you're not necessarily from a backlogged country. Or if you are EB-1A and you are looking to get a priority date now, maybe you qualify for both NIW and you would get that first to get your priority date now and then work towards an EB-1A application later where you can then use that priority date towards that next application. But, there are a lot of people that don't necessarily qualify for both. So starting off with the NIW, this is showing that your work is in the national interest. So that means that the work that you are doing benefits more than just your employer. It has some sort of economic benefit or innovative benefit, public health benefit. Something to do with a major infrastructure like supply chain or something like that. So the work you are doing is benefiting more than just your employer. America overall is getting benefits from your work. So that's the NIW application. The EB-1A is looking at things that you have already accomplished, and that is showing that you are at the top of your field. So you meet at least 3 of the criteria as well as the final merits analysis to show the officer that yes, you are at the top of your field, that you are an expert. And, America obviously would want to retain or gain experts in the top of their field for the EB-1A purpose. So NIW, you're definitely looking at it in a different way. NIW is very future focused. How will you be impactful? And yes, it does also look at how have you already been impactful, because it helps the officer see if you have a past record of success, how you are likely to then have a future impact and a future record that would be beneficial to America. So we are looking at these things very differently. NIW, again, looking forward. As to the future, EB-1A very much looking at what you have already accomplished. The EB-1A is not future focused like the NIW is. So, there might be some people that, again, qualify for one, but not the other. So maybe you are a top expert, but your field is not necessarily in the national interest and the national importance to impact beyond the employer. So in that case, then it might make sense for you to go for EB-1A and just skip the NIW. If you are doing work that is in the national interest and you can show that through objective evidence, not just reference letters, then it definitely makes sense to go for the NIW. And if you are from a backlogged country, then it might be worth considering going and profile building for an EB-1A in the future so you don't have such a ridiculously long backlog to get your green card. So let's see, those are a couple of differences in the standards. So NIW is all based upon your proposed endeavor. What will you do that will be impactful? And the EB-1A is pretty much focused on what your field of expertise is and how you can show that you are at the top of the field. And, there are different criteria for EB-1A, such as critical or leading role, original contributions, high salary, judge role, authorship, awards, there's a few others as well. And then you have to also not only meet at least 3 of them, but then you have to also meet the final merits analysis, which shows that, overall, like even if you do meet all 3 criteria, the officer looks at everything collectively. Does everything collectively show that you are a top expert? So that's also important to note. For NIW, that is not the case. So NIW, you qualify through advanced degree, or if you don't have an advanced degree, then through exceptional ability. And that is where it can get a little confusing, because if you don't have a master's or you don't have a bachelor's plus 5 years progressive experience, then the criteria for exceptional ability does kind of mimic and look similar to an EB-1A criteria. And that's where I think some people get confused and mixed up. So NIW for exceptional ability has things like if you have a degree, if you have 10 plus years of full-time experience, if you've been, highly paid for your services, if you've been recognized by experts, if you have any sort of specific licensing or certification that is needed for your job. So these are definitely different criteria and they are used differently. but people sometimes mix them up. So NIW, if you can qualify with a master's degree or bachelor's plus 5 years progressive experience, that is definitely recommended because there is not as many holes for the officer to poke through when looking at your case. So that's a couple of different ways, to kind of show the differences just from the get-go, and then to kind of see how, each one is framed and to see which one may make more sense for you. As far as timelines and processing, I think I already discussed that, but EB-1A, rest of world, you are current, you could get your green card right away, while those from the other countries like China, India do have a little bit of a backlog, and then NIW has a backlog for everybody. It's just, a few years for those from rest of world, more than that for China, and then definitely infinitely more than that for those from India. So some risks to watch out for. For NIW, everything is really, again, based upon your proposed endeavor. Again, future focused, and you want to make sure that it is clearly defined. You have a real roadmap forward for you to follow, short-term goals, long-term goals, describing how you will actually do this, like what kind of methods will you use, techniques, technologies, etc. That is the foundation. And then everything from that, we discussed the 3 different prongs of DANISAR. Prong 1, if there's substantial merit and national importance. Prong 2, well-positioned. And then prong 3 is the balancing test to show that you would not be harming the workforce there. But definitely, I think that a common pitfall for NIW specifically is that people don't really establish their proposed endeavor in a realistic kind of way. And it's not an analysis of your job or your company or even your field. Like, you need to have a specific roadmap forward for you as an individual within that field in order to show how you would realistically make that impact. For EB-1A, I think that people don't fully understand all the different criteria and the different evidences that are needed for an EB-1A application. So, for instance, for original contributions, I feel like this one is the one that trips up most people. So not only do you need to have an original thing that you have created, whether that be through, this is like a theoretical idea that you have established. You have to also show how it has leveled up like the playing field. Other people have used it and has risen like the standard in your field. Other companies, agencies, whatever is using your original contribution. And the original contribution itself is, again, it's more of like the theoretical idea behind it. And we prove what the original contribution is through something with obviously a paper trail, like a patent or a publication or something like that. But the original contribution itself is not the patent. The original contribution is the idea, and the patent is the thing that is getting portrayed and, shown to USCIS as like the physical thing that backs up that original idea. Same thing again with the publication. But it definitely has like a 2-step process for original contributions. And I think that is what trips up people a lot. Not only do you have to have that original contribution, but it has to be showcased and used by others in the field. So I'm going to move now to questions. So if anyone has any questions, please put them in the comments and I can help go through them and use the rest of our time for questions. All right, so I see a question here. Are you still doing profile evaluations since consultations are only 25 minutes? What's the best way to get prepared to make the most of it? This is a really great question. So we were doing free evaluations for both NIWs and EB-1As, but unfortunately, we just got overwhelmed by the demand and couldn't keep up with it in a reasonable way. We are maybe thinking of streamlining that process and opening them up again later on, but we're not sure if we're going to be actually doing that or not. So the best way to get a profile evaluation is through the consultation, and it is about 25 minutes. I know me personally, I tend to go over time by just a few minutes, so maybe it's closer to the 30-minute mark. But this is where we ask you to give us your resume, and we kind of use that as like a guiding area for the application. But I would make sure, so the best way to prepare and get the most out of it is make sure your resume is up to date. Make sure that you have everything on there. If you've gotten a new job, if you've gotten a new, like maybe you've done a speaking role or been on a peer review panel, been on a committee, or have a membership, make sure that it is definitely all inclusive, because that'll just make my job easier to be able to see everything that we have to discuss, and how to kind of bring it all together. So for my NIW consultations, I definitely find that helpful. And I also will ask, what kind of projects are you working on now? Sometimes people are in a new role, or sometimes people have been in that role for a long time. And I want to know, like, what kind of projects were you on initially versus what you're on now? Or I may want to know, how does your new role now align with what kind of projects you've done in the last job? So I'm trying to see, like, is there like a connection between everything? What is the overall arching, technique and technology or skill that you've had across the line? And then I also want to know, what have you done as far as industry contributions outside of your job? So that's where I want to know, have you done any official mentoring or peer review, judge panel, publications, speaking engagements? Have you even gone to conferences? Do you have any memberships? Have you obtained any certifications? I want to know all of that stuff. So I think just making sure that your profile, your resume is up to date is really helpful. And that's the same thing for EB-1A. So those are all the same kind of questions, those things that we're looking for in the criteria. Do you have a Google Scholar page or ResearchGate? Maybe linking that on the resume. Discussing, like, if you have any patents, kind of like labeling that, and yeah, so I definitely think the resume is a good, like, overview going into any of the consultations. If NIW is approved, then can I file for EB-1A? So, in theory, yes. So if someone has an NIW that is approved, then if you qualify for EB-1A, of course, you can then file for an EB-1A, and then you can use that NIW priority date towards your EB-1A. But, the question then would be, do you qualify for EB-1A? Obviously. So sometimes people need to profile build in order to kind of gain some additional items for that profile to use as proof of your, being in the top of the field and things like that. So, that is definitely something that we can help analyze if you maybe qualify for both. And if you are from backlogged countries such as India, using that NIW is kind of like a stepping stone where you lock in your date now. So then by the time you do qualify for EB-1A, a lot of the time, the priority date is current, or it's very soon to be current. So then you can then get your green card in a faster kind of a way. How do I send you the resume, please? Yes, so you would make an appointment. So when you go to waypointimmigration.org, at the top you click appointments, and then you would click on the book now under EB-1A if you wanted to discuss EB-1A and NIW, or if you just want to discuss NIW, then obviously just click on NIW. You pick your date and time as to what works for you. You can also see which team member you will be speaking with. So if you look under service details, you'll either see my name, Helen Partlow, or you'll see Alexandra Law's name. She is a partner in the firm. We both do the NIW consultation. So as you then do it and fill out, there's a little form just kind of giving us some overview as to if you are in America, what status you're on, what's your education and stuff. And then at the bottom, it'll say, please use this upload link to provide your resume. You would hopefully check it off that you did. And then there's a link to upload your resume. And that is a database that I would then look for when I'm doing the call with you. If you wanted to do alternatively the EB-1A consultation, where we would discuss either just EB-1A or both EB-1A and NIW, you would do the same thing. Pick your date and time, and then you would be able to meet either with Alex, or then you would be able to meet with Amber. Right now, those are the two team members that are fielding those kind of consultations. It's just a way for us to divide the work up and stuff like that. So yeah, as you make your consultation, there is a way for you to upload the resume, and then we will be able to use that during the call together. Can I use I-140 from NIW for EB-1A or start a new EB-1A I-140? So these are definitely different applications, and they are separate applications. So if you do an NIW, you would have to fill out your I-140 for the NIW. And then once you do apply for EB-1A, you would have to fill out a new I-140. And on there, they ask you something like, have you ever had an immigrant visa petition filed on your behalf before? You would check off yes. And then an additional, like in the section at the very end where they have like empty space for you to add in additional details, you would add in like your NIW receipt number and your priority date from the NIW. And then you would say something like, please use this priority date and apply it for this current application or something along those lines. That way you are asking the officer to apply that priority date from the previous I-140 to this current I-140. But yes, they are definitely different forms. You would not fill them out the same way per se. I mean, it'll definitely have a ton of overlap for sure, but you know, they would not be identical. All right, I don't see any more questions. So I'll wait a moment or so. If anyone has any other questions for me to answer, you know, please post it in the comments. Or if you are watching this on the recorded version, you know, feel free to send a comment, or you can message me on LinkedIn. I can see if there's anything else I can help answer with that. Okay, here's another question. For senior engineers that also happen to have papers, one or two papers with low citation, are they enough to claim authorship of scholarly articles? So that's a good question. So when we are looking at the authorship criteria for EB-1A, I want to know, is this someone that's in industry, such as an engineer, or is this person a researcher? Because I'm going to look at it differently, you know, kind of dependent upon what field and role you are in. So for someone that is in industry, you know, it is obviously unusual for someone to have authorship. So having just a couple of papers with a low citation, I think would meet like the plain language of the criteria. And, you know, we would also want to make sure that, you know, it's not just that you had something that was authored, but we want to know where was it published? What criteria did you have to meet? We want to know about where it showed up, basically. And having a low citation is still, you know, again, because you're not a researcher, they're not looking at it in that same kind of view. But, you know, if you do meet authorship and it is barely meeting the criteria, it may not help you too much in that final merits determination. So when you are then looking at the overall application, you know, and you only meet 3 criteria, I think it would make it difficult then for the officer to find, you know, that final merits that you are in the top of your field, unless you have like other really strong criteria to help kind of overcome you know, a viable but weak authorship criteria. Oh, no problem. All right, I'll give it just another moment or two if anyone has any questions. Otherwise, see if there's anything else I can think about that would be like a quick thing to add in here for NIW or EB-1A. You know, there are also people that don't qualify for NIW that would qualify for EB-1A. Like I said, NIW is all about that impact beyond the employer. And if you can't, you know, reasonably show that, because there's definitely a need to have more objective evidence these days, not just reference letters. Like we need actual proof to substantiate the reference letters and the application as a whole. So, maybe you are a top professional, but you are not doing things that can be reasonably explained for NIW purposes, and then it might make sense to do the EB-1A and not the NIW. So, it really does just depend on the individual, and that's why, I would definitely urge someone to make a consultation with us, because that's something that we could look at more closely to see if you could qualify for one or the other, or potentially both, and if both make sense for you. If you are not from China or India, a place with a really big backlog, it may not make sense to work towards that EB-1A if you do qualify for NIW, because maybe waiting the 3 to 5 years is more reasonable for you. And I know for sure both of these do not grant you any sort of a status. They are open to people around the world, so you do not need to be in America. But if you are in America, this does not give you a status. It doesn't give you any work authorization. It doesn't do any of that. So you have to wait until your green card is in hand in order to do any of those other things. So, a lot of the time, the clients that we talk to are on H-1B and perm is failing, or they're running out of time and their employer won't do perm or can't do perm, or if perm failed, whatever the case may be, and they are looking for other options. So the NIW and EB-1A are definitely long-term type of goals. They are not going to help any sort of a short-term thing unless you are looking for, if you do get this approved, you can extend your H-1B past the 6-year time frame. So in that case, it could be something that could help in the short term, but also these applications take a really long time to put together. There is a ton of documentation, a lot of research, a lot of strategizing, kind of pulling it all together. So, I would definitely not wait until the last minute. And definitely if you have an I-140 that is pending by the time you are ending your 5th year and starting that 6th year of H-1B, you can then request a 1-year extension of your H-1B while you are waiting for results from your I-140. So what type of authorship works for industry profiles outside of writing scholarly articles? Well, it is just scholarly articles. So the criteria for EB-1A is authorship of scholarly articles. So, this is not like looking for blogs or anything like that. So we are looking for scholarly articles for EB-1A authorship. All right, so I don't see any other questions, and I'm a little over time at this point. So thank you everybody for joining me, and I'll see you actually not next week because I'm out of the office next week, but I will see everybody in 2 weeks. So if anyone has any questions, please feel free to DM me, go to our website, download the free NIW guide, and I'll talk to you all soon.